I would like to thank these professionals who are joining us today to talk about the secret life of girls and the topics that are covered in this show. We're going to have a conversation addressing some of these issues with our colleagues Kathleen Fisher, who is a parent and family coach, with Andy McGarrahan, who is a psychologist, and with Carolyn Lynch Parcells, who's an adolescent medicine physician. I am also an adolescent medicine physician here in our local community. I want to start off by asking your opinions of what this show is about and why it matters.
I see it as about typical struggles that, in this case, adolescent females experience at kind of crucial points in their development of kind of identity, and the struggles that they face with peer relationships that are very typical for girls, for any girls. They're typical for guys too. It's just these are the play highlights really nicely kind of what some of these struggles might look like for girls, and it also, I think it takes it also, Susan, into kind of some of the mental health challenges that can come up in adolescent development, and does a nice job of kind of emphasizing kind of what some of the implications of those things are.
Yeah, kind of dovetailing on that, I would say part of what I really love about the name of the play, The Secret Life of Girls, right, is it addresses some of these issues that I think a lot of us kind of know are there, but it really addresses more that kind of aspect of dealing with relationships and social relationships and these stressors that can occur kind of under the radar, especially under the radar of the adults involved, and those issues that can come up and that young women often try to hide, either from their peers or from their support system in general, the adults in their lives. And then how do you deal with that? How do you go about managing that?
So let's start with what one might see in a doctor's office that might present in one way, but underneath be other issues. And then maybe, Andy, will have you talk about where you might deal with some of those issues from your perspective. And then I think the home run, Kathleen, is how do you, as that coach, help the parents and family deal with that? So let's pretend one of the young women in this show, as they might, is having stomach aches. And I think we see that Abby has some stomach aches in these shows, and Rebecca maybe is having some nausea and some vomiting. And so the parent, not understanding what's going on, brings them to their doctor, and what might you see and how might you uncover what's happening? Absolutely.
Oftentimes I feel like these young ladies present in my clinic with more physical complaints, right? The stomach aches are a big one, right? But also, the nausea, decreased appetite, headaches, some more irritability, agitation, kind of these are the things that have caught their attention or their parents' attention or their peers' attention, and they end up in our clinic. And that's why when we see a young lady with abdominal pain, that is not a short visit. It's not. We really have to dig in, we have to ask the right questions, we have to give them a safe space in which to be able to talk to us in a very non-judgmental way and to really be able to open up. And ask those questions that aren't just about that physical symptom, but then what are the stressors going on in their life? What are things that they feel like could be triggers, things that they could be concerned about? And then asking the other hard questions that could be associated with that. Are you having any thoughts of wanting to hurt yourself? Are you having thoughts of wanting to hurt anybody else? Have you hurt yourself? All of those things that then can also kind of open up what's really going on.
Do you worry that asking someone about self-harm or suicide might make them want to or try to hurt themselves?
I am so glad you asked that question. No, I'm not, because we know, and we know from the research, that it does not. That talking about suicide, talking about self-harm, asking those questions does not increase its likelihood, okay? But getting them to talk to us about it, finding out what's going on, gives us the opportunity to intervene in those problems before they actually do something to seriously hurt themselves.
And so I imagine in a situation like this, you may refer them to a psychologist to dig a little deeper and get some more support. So,
absolutely.
Andy, give us a little of your perspective on how any of these girls in the play, or anyone who's being bullied in general, may then present to your office, and what would your approach be?
Well, they might present, kind of from a pediatrician's office, and the pediatrician may have uncovered some difficulties with mood or anxiety or some behaviors that are concerning, like cutting, or some eating disorder type behaviors. And so when I see them, that may already be kind of on their minds and on their parents' minds as, oh, this is not just something that is a medical issue, a quote-unquote medical issue. There's something going on from a psychological standpoint too. So, I've got that kind of already kind of started when I have the first conversation with them, and I'll be thinking about, okay, what are some of the things that are getting in this person's way, like what you said, the establishing the rapport and the trust to, as you're trying to get kids to be able to feel comfortable to tell you things that might be really critical to understanding their difficulties, and then you being able as a clinician to intervene is really important for all of us as clinicians.
Can you go into a little more detail about what depression looks like for a teenager and why that might look different than depression in an adult?
Yeah. In adolescence, it may be that you have more irritability and anger compared to sadness that we more likely will see with adults. Abby's character also, her mom was talking about her difficulties concentrating. I think she may have been having some difficulties with sleeping, and you'll see in the play too that she had become very isolated. She wasn't doing the things that she used to really like to do. In the beginnings of the play, she's so excited about her, the things like riding horses and being with friends. And after the difficulties that she has related to the volleyball, bullying that she experiences related to the volleyball, she really withdraws from everyone. And you start to see that in her mood, but also just in physiologically too, and just, I can't concentrate, I can't sleep very well. Appetite difficulties are also common with depression, as are impacts on self-esteem. So you'll see kids in your office that talk about how much they don't like themselves, how much everybody hates them, how much how pessimistic they are about things coming up, and they can be very black and white about that, and really kind of dismiss things about themselves that really are wonderful and great, and they think, boy, so all this is really negative stuff about themselves.
The other thing that I see is yes, there's the persistence of those mood changes, but there's a lot more volatility. There's a lot more variation with teenagers. You'll see them go up and down. It's not just that constant sadness or constant irritability, that kind of moodiness, I think, that people think about. And that can be really difficult, I think, and that because people look at that and go, well, but she was happy yesterday, right? Or she was happy when she was doing this, and now we're down here. And at what point is that variation normal versus at what point is that variation abnormal or maladaptive or signaling a problem? And that can be really challenging.
So one of the things that I see the play demonstrating so beautifully is the disconnect between the parents and the kids. And what we see is Abby's mother clearly knows something is wrong and tries to elicit some information so that she can be helpful. And what we see Abby respond with is anger and irritability. And you see a hint of Abby's mother trying to stay patient, but at some point it crosses a line and then she responds back with anger, and now you have an escalated situation. We also see some parents, like Sutton's mother, who is egging things on and reinforcing the bullying, if not bullying herself. And then we see a coach who seems to be following the cultural norms of pushing her team to be winners, but yet not understanding the dynamics underneath, and maybe then reinforcing some negative behaviors in that group.
The first thing that strikes my attention is Abby's mother absolutely wants to do something helpful. There's no doubt. She's a good mom. She's in the game. And yet, like so many of us parents, when our kid is uncomfortable or unhappy, she sort of gets into a dynamic. And I love delineating the difference between complaining, which is sort of code for somebody needs to fix this, versus venting. I need somebody who cares about me to listen. And those are two different things. And most parents perceive those as, I need to fix this. And Abby's mom jumps right in, and she's going to fix it and tell the kid what to do. And it's not going so well. And the next thing we know, the kid's kicking mom in the teeth. When a kid kicks mom in the teeth, actually that's a pretty good sign. Because what it means is, I want to run my own life. I almost think I can manage this, maybe. And so then that's a pretty good cue that it's time for parents to change their roles. I'd love to hear parents say, did you want me to do something about that? Or is listening what you wanted me to do? I mean, it's such a simple, we wouldn't think of jumping in and solving our friend's problem. We'd say, do you want me to fix it? Or were you just telling me about it? And yet we do it all the time. And so sort of looking at what would have happened if Abby's mom had been listening and inviting her to sort through it. And so how can we be helpful as parents, professionals, teachers, coaches, whatever, in helping kids understand what's going on and what are they thinking, wanting, and feeling? What am I thinking, wanting, and feeling? How do we negotiate that?
And I would say, both as a young woman who's been bullied before, well, when I was a young woman, but as someone who has experienced bullying like this at 10, 11, and at 13, 14, 15, yes, one would think with adult eyes that they would get it and they wouldn't fall for it, but we saw it in our own lives and we see it in our kids and our patients' lives, and they fall for it every time, and this is part of the process. And so part of what the value of the talkbacks is it gives a way for us to understand what really happens, but then also to regroup and find some alternative ways to behave and respond after. And so the value of the show is that we can then use it as a professional opportunity to talk to people about, here are some tools, here are some resources, here are some different ways to look at it, so that people can take it home and do it differently.
Well, and I think this also brings us to a piece that a lot of us, especially those of us who are involved in the theater and love the theater, and have always seen the value of theater as education, right? Rehearsal for life. And we do this in our clinic. We do this in our clinic. We'll talk to parents, we'll talk to kids about, what are some of the challenging situations you faced, or what are, if we were kind of doing our anticipatory guidance, how would you deal with it if somebody asked you if you wanted a cigarette? Or what would you do if somebody asked you if you wanted a drink? And we encourage parents and kids to talk about this and think through the situations, knowing that they're never going to be able to come up with every scenario that they might face, but knowing that, especially with where they are in development, right? If they do think through it first, if they do practice it, they are going to be more likely. Are they going to be successful every time? No. But they are going to be a lot more likely to, instead of react impulsively, right, as their brains so often do at these ages, they're going to be more likely to be able to bring up that information and use it in that real life situation, right? So that is the other thing that I think is so wonderful about this, is exactly what you said, using it as an opportunity to start those conversations and then continue those conversations forward. I also agree the car is a good place to do it because they are captive. They're a captive audience. They can't get away. I often tell parents this is a great time to have those conversations.
The other great thing about a car is that you're not staring at each other. You have the opportunity to look elsewhere.
Yes.
And almost by definition is not when you go face to face and say, tell me what you think about that.
And it's time limited. It's only 3 more minutes till we pull in the driveway.
Yes!
I don't think there is a parent alive that, to the greatest of their ability, wouldn't love to shield their child from difficult situations, whatever that might be. I mean, something you said a minute ago, Susan, made me think, there are going to be people that just don't like my kid. And sometimes I'm in that list. No. So here we have a dynamic where some kids don't like my kid, or some people leave my kid out. And as a parent, it kind of hurts my heart, and I want to jump in and not do that. And yet, what we know is that our brain learns and adjusts and grows best when it's in a position of discomfort. As long as everything is going along nicely, our brain's like, dum-de-dum-de-dum-de-dum, and then something goes wrong, like, whoa, stop, what has to happen here? And it seems to me that by watching it up there on that stage, boy, it's just the next best thing. to having the kid have to go through it for himself or herself. And so there's a real positive advantage, I think, of, putting it out over there.
Seeing your experience on stage, that gives you that shared experience. That lets you know you're not alone. It's not just you.
That's a good point.
It validates that experience.
And it's
it
not just
validates-
my school.
It's not just my school. It's not just me. And not only that, but it validates that this is an important experience, important enough that other people are willing to put their time and energy into it, to put it on stage and to put it in front of other people. That's the other power that I've always felt like theater had. And so, you have a kid sitting in that audience. You may have a kid sitting on one side of the audience who's never been through this before and is like, oh my goodness, and then they can have that conversation with their parent and hopefully do better if that ever does come their way. But then you have that child that's sitting there going, oh my goodness, it's not just me, and maybe they haven't said anything to anybody. Maybe they haven't had that conversation with a friend or a parent or their physician, and now they're realizing maybe they can, and they're learning some skills and some tools to do that, or maybe they get in the car and mom asks the right question.
The shared experience that we all have that normalizes it, and for children and adolescents, so often thinking that, oh, wait, I'm alone in this.
Right.
Nobody else thinks like this. This doesn't happen to other people. Nobody else feels like this. I must be something must be terribly wrong with me. And that's a very lonely, difficult
Yes.
place to be in.
Very isolating.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming and sharing your perspectives on it. I think what you've said is really important, and I think it's going to help parents and professionals to really understand the role that this show can have in their own communities. And I hope that everybody, even if you're in a small town in a rural state, knows someone who can talk to kids, who understands what bullying is about, and reach out to be part of that experience if some group wants to put the show on in their community.